Hello, Facebook fans. Welcome to Gay USA.
We have so much news today that we could do 2 hours if we wanted to.
We'll talk fast.
But I get so hungry by the end of the show, I don't think I could do a second hour.
It's good. It's good to be hungry.
Yes, for so many reasons.
Oh, exhausting, though. Well, of course, it's partly because the state legislatures are in session and they're doing a lot of damage, some doing some good.
Texas is quite a place.
Oh, my God. Texas and Florida and Montana.
But Texas is turning all their schools into religious schools.
Well, I have a line about that.
I'm sure you do. Let me see if I can find the headlines. Oh, there they are.
Actually, I put it in the headlines.
Yes, I liked your line in the headlines.
Thank you. Well, it's true. I mean, and when are people going to start objecting to the Bible?
When are they going to, I'm thrilled at the objections that are taking place and the walkouts and the demos and everything, but it's not nearly enough.
No.
It needs to be much bigger.
Well, I hope it energizes people for all elections to come.
Yeah.
But of course, it seems to energize the other side as well.
I have a solution for Kamala.
Yeah?
Yeah, Feinstein resigns, Newsom...
And we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup.
Lots of news. We're going to talk fast. Happy Lesbian Visibility Day, Ann.
Yeah, let me just say, so we don't have to spend time on it during the show, the L Word cast and creator were at the White House for Lesbian Visibility Week. Jennifer Beals, Catherine Manning, Leisha Haley, Eileen Chaikin with the lesbian press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre. On to the
trouble in Montana, where a trans member of the legislature was silenced for telling her Republican colleagues who vote to ban gender-affirming care for youth that they have blood on their hands.
Woo, they didn't like that. In Florida, students walked out to protest anti-LGBTQ and racist Republicans, and drag queens marched on Tallahassee.
Governor DeSantis in Florida, his crusade against Disney draws ridicule from Republican presidential hopefuls from Trump on down.
And a lawsuit from Disney. Texas votes to post a conversation starter on adultery in every public school classroom. That's Andy's line.
The United States House Republicans passed a national ban on trans girls and women and girls and women's school sports.
Out Don Lemon is out at CNN, and the anti-LGBTQ Tucker Carlson and his very gay senior producer are out at Fox.
More evidence that anti-abortion pill judge Kaczmarek illegally hid anti-LGBT and anti-choice writings and interviews.
We remember playwrights Megan Terry and Robert Patrick, New Jersey gay activist James Creedle, trans photographer Lauren Cameron, Coco Dedal, a star of the hit documentary Kokomo City, entertainer and civil rights leader Harry Belafonte, and cross-dressing performer Dame Edna Everage.
The upcoming movie adaptation of William S. Burroughs' novel Queer has been cast with non-gay actors.
And Andy will review Camelot and Peter Pan Goes Wrong on Broadway.
But things are really going wrong in Montana, where Zoe Zephyr, an out transgender member of the legislature, is being silenced by her colleagues for something that she said on the floor of the House in a debate over banning gender-affirming care.
This bill tries to define male and female as binary. You could not legislate binary sex any more than you could legislate that the earth is flat. Intersex people exist, trans people exist, and this bill doesn't change that. If you are forcing a trans child to go through puberty when they are trans, that is tantamount to torture. If you vote yes on this bill and yes on these amendments, I hope the next time there's an invocation, when you bow your heads in prayer, you see the blood on your hands.
Whoa, they did not like that. And she was told to shut up. She was silenced. She was told she could not speak anymore until she apologized for the blood on your hands comment. She tried to speak on this bill and other bills for the next couple of days. They would not let her speak. They told her she was disrespectful and rude and had violated the
decorum of the House. It's
thank
just
you,
like,
decorum.
it's
Yes.
like Tennessee. It's the same thing as Tennessee. You're not,
Yeah.
we have an absolute majority here, veto proof. We can do what we want.
So then the next thing that happened was a couple of days later, when she tried to speak and was not recognized and silenced, her supporters showed up in the gallery of the House and proceeded to demonstrate by yelling at the House of Representatives. So that was a loud but peaceful demonstration, which the leaders of the House then defined as a riot and an insurrection, sent riot police up to stop it and force people out, arrested 7 people.
Right. And then Representative Zephyr spoke to her supporters outside.
And what you heard today is people standing for democracy. People standing to let their voices be heard in that floor. And what you're watching here is you're watching people who do not want to see democracy in action. They want to strip us of our rights, and it's not enough for them to get the harmful bills through. When someone stands up and calls out their bills for the harm they cause, for the deaths they cause, they want silence. And we will not be complicit in our eradication.
Supporters will not be complicit in their eradication, but the House today, as we tape on Wednesday, is scheduled either to censure her or to expel her from the House, as the 2 members of the legislature in Tennessee were expelled. Now, the Tennessee members were eventually returned to the House because to fill their seats, their local council had to choose people to fill those seats, and they chose the same guys, and they were accepted back by the legislature. So the same rules basically apply in Montana. The House will report to the Secretary of State will report to the county where she was elected, Missoula, and the Democrats in Missoula, because she was elected as a Democrat, will be allowed to appoint someone new to the position. They can reappoint her or they can appoint someone else. Then the question becomes, will the Montana House of Representatives, 68 Republicans and 32 Democrats, accept her back on the floor, assuming they have kicked her out in the first place?
And we do have reports. I mean, she's not exaggerating when she says blood on their hands, because we do have reports about young transgender people taking their own lives in the midst of this horrific assault on them. Now, we do have one person standing up to the governor. It's his son. The governor, Greg Gianforte, has a son who is non-binary, David, and asked to meet with his dad to talk these things over and try to dissuade him from signing these bills. And they did meet, but he didn't get anywhere.
Well, and David came out to his family as gay a few years ago, has remained a member of the family, although they don't talk about it at length after that first coming out, and then came out as non-binary. Gianforte is known as a rabid right-winger, so he's not expected to overrule the legislature in any way, but at least he's cordial to his child.
Lots of news from the states. In Alabama, the closeted gay governor, Kay Ivey, fired her director of early childhood education for using a teacher training book that had language around inclusion and structural racism, including the idea that families come in many compositions, including those led by LGBTQAI people, and that students need to hear and see messages that promote equality, dignity, and worth. Well, not in Alabama. It's very similar to the Children of the Rainbow controversy in New York, which was like 25 years ago.
In Texas, the legislature has passed a bill to mandate the posting of the 10 Commandments in every classroom. And to wait a second, and to put aside prayer time. These are public school classrooms.
Well, of course, one of those commandments is "Thou shalt not commit adultery." A very adult concept. I didn't know much of. I never understood what they were talking about when they said that when I was a kid. But now maybe this will open up some conversations that they won't like.
Well, there are many implications of all of these laws that have been unanticipated. The Texas law also rules out any diversity, equity, or inclusion programs in universities and colleges. You can't do it. It's against the law, which is basically what they've done in Florida, too. And they did finally formalize the extension of the Don't Say Gay law in Florida through 12th grade.
Well, you should also say, if you're in Texas, that the agriculture department has passed a new dress code. You got to dress like a woman or a man, your biological sex. You can wear Western gear, but it's got to be appropriate to your birth gender.
Oh my God. I mean, this is so clearly unconstitutional, but we're now going to spend years litigating this in court. I can just see the Supreme Court having this conversation. I remember in 1970 when I went to work for a magazine in Washington, D.C. out of college, and the big debate was, could women wear pants to the White House press conferences in the briefing room? And it was a great breakthrough when someone dared to walk in there with pants on.
All right. Let's go to Florida, where the resistance has risen up. Students organized something called Walk Out to Learn across the state, protesting the onslaught of reactionary laws, Don't Say Gay, Anti-Woke Act, banning teaching on race, gender, and intersectionality, ban any speech or expressing activity that advocates for diversity, equity, the same thing that, So they walked out all across the state. And
they held a drag march to the Capitol in Tallahassee, and some very inspiring video from that. Very impactful when you walk into a hall with that kind of acoustics and start yelling.
And then the kids walked out. It was students in high schools. We have a picture of the students at Winter Park High School in Orange County who walked out en masse out of the school. It was 300 high schools. 90% of the colleges participated. There's the picture in Winter Park. And this was organized by students across the state. In Jacksonville, the activist Alexis Williams said, "What do Ron DeSantis and I have in common? Not a whole lot, but we both love talking about gay and Black people." For me, it's because I'm part of both of these communities, she said. But he's trying to ban talking about these communities in schools.
And this was supposed to be a one-day event, this walkout, but that Winter Park High School walkout was 3 days later. These walkouts are continuing across the state. And then the DeSantis Disney fight is escalating because that's so cute. Because DeSantis's new oversight board that Disney tried to undercut by passing some rules before the new one took over. The new board has now ordered the Disney rules overridden, and Disney is suing and saying they're not allowed to do that. The rules we passed when our board was still in place should rule, and they're going to be spending a lot of time in litigation over that.
Yes, because Disney is suing for retaliation based on them just expressing their views. Now, the interesting thing this week is that the Republican candidates for president are starting to speak out. Trump did it. They all did it now, and are taking him on over this. Trump called DeSantis, this Disney thing, an unnecessary political stunt. He said DeSantis is absolutely being destroyed by Disney. He said Disney's next move will be to no more money will be invested in Florida because of the governor. Chris Christie claimed that DeSantis wouldn't be able to handle Putin or Xi if he can't see around a corner to Disney's CEO Bob Iger created for you. And Nikki Haley, I mean, they're all going after him.
Who would have predicted this? Intramural
move in herds.
Intramural Republican fighting over Disney. Meanwhile, in Clay County, Florida, they are preemptively withholding books in anticipation of a bill that with new restrictions on what books can be in schools. They haven't even passed the bill yet, and Clay County is withholding the books.
And the expansion of Don't Say Gay. And remember, when DeSantis did it, he said, well, this is up to the third grade. Everybody agrees we shouldn't talk about sex before that. Some people thought that was reasonable. It's not really. But anyway, so he expanded it to the 12th grade. And the NEA is up in arms about this. Federal law prohibits discrimination versus LGBTQ staff and students. So there's going to be a federal case about this. And then the DeSantis's health commissioner, we learned this week, moved to change a study that results showed that 18 to 39-year-olds were fine taking the vaccines. He just changed it and said, no, it's dangerous. He made it sound dangerous. And of course, he's got blood on his hands for the people who didn't take the vaccine as a result.
Well, this is what's, Montana and Florida, today's case in points, because the governors have full rule of the state because they have so packed their legislatures on their behalf. There is no dissent allowed. There is no debate. There is no back and forth, no negotiation. Whatever the governor wants is what they do.
Well, go ahead.
In Port St. Lucie, Florida, they have canceled the annual Pride Parade because of a DeSantis law that restricts events to like this to over 21, a Pride Parade, because someone might be dressed up in an outfit that doesn't conform to his idea of gender identity.
This is what Bill O'Reilly used to fulminate about all the time. He had you and me on his show to talk about it. In Ohio, the GOP, and of course, what they're really trying to do now is really dismantle our democracy, seize. They're worried that voters could pass constitutional amendments on gun control, reproductive freedom, and minimum wage, so they just made it harder to do so. If you want to do it, you got to get a 60% vote instead of just a majority vote. Now, I will say this, that's awful, but we can still put these things on the ballot, and it's going to draw out more of our voters, and we hope hurt them in the elections.
So that we can win other seats, even if we can't win that 60% threshold ballot measure. But again, this is all about not just majority rule, but majority fiat.
Actually minority rule when it comes down to who gets the most votes in the state.
Yes, and how they're gerrymandered. In one side note in Ohio, the man who tried to burn down the Chesterland Church because he thought they were having a drag show or something, he has been hit with federal charges.
Okay. In North Carolina, the virulently anti-LGBTQ Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, who says his God formed him to fight LGBTQ rights, has announced for the Republican nomination for governor and is apparently the front runner.
When I saw that, my jaw really dropped to the floor that he's running and has a good chance of being elected. We've talked about this guy on the show. He is unbelievable. He is so right wing. And the legislature, even without him as in the governor's seat, has passed a no trans girls in school sports.
Okay. Shall we go to Richland, Washington? We missed the Washington State. We missed this Sunday. We missed this story back on Easter Sunday. And you introduced the clip since you edited it.
A restaurant in Richland, Washington, scheduled a drag show on Easter Sunday. Everybody welcome, nothing sexual, just a fun little drag show. Well, some people in the community got up in arms. The mayor said, well, if you write a polite letter to the restaurant if you think this is inappropriate. I think it's inappropriate. I will write a polite letter. And this is what happened afterwards.
The general manager of the Emerald of Siam, Tim Thornton, tells me he was already stressed about today because he wasn't sure how the brunch was going to go after a discussion held at the Richland City Council meeting on April 4th.
I am particularly very sad that they picked this event to have on Easter Sunday and to gear it to the children because this doesn't reflect our community values. So I've been encouraging people just to send Emerald of Siam a note, a polite note, just expressing that you're sad about doing that.
Thornton tells me those notes have been anything but polite.
It was nothing but people screaming at us on the phone and just messaging us, calling us.
I reached out to Mayor Pro Tem Teresa Richardson about her comments at the meeting, and she tells me,
I was just responding to a Richland resident that was concerned about the event and suggesting a polite note. In no way is that expressing hate speech.
As far as the actual event is concerned, Thornton tells me he woke up to some disturbing news the morning of the drag show.
Woke up this morning and got sent a video and a picture of what the front of our shop looked like, and people had wheat pasted, vandalized our windows on the front of our building all the way across.
When he arrived, members of East Lake Church were helping remove the posters. The posters had the names of 3 children who were victims of the Nashville shooting and the phrase, "Enough is enough, the transgender experiment has failed, groomers not welcome in Richland." And while there were people protesting, it remained a peaceful protest, and the brunch went as planned.
It sends the wrong message because we're not protecting our children. I mean, that's really the big reason why I'm out here today on Easter, is protect the children.
Those who say that haven't really done enough research to know what's actually going on at these drag shows. Because in all honesty, all we do is show everyone, even including the children, how to love and express yourself without the fear of what everyone else is going to say.
Well, the owner of the place said, look, I'm sorry there's so much hate out there, but the outpouring of love that we got from the community has also been enormous.
And that's very heartwarming. But we did see this coming after the shooting of the school, the elementary school in Nashville, the 3 kids and 3 adults killed, and the perpetrator being assumed to be a trans man. People just said, oh, that's it. Now everybody's going to be blamed for this. And, that's one horrible, awful incident. And meanwhile, we've seen so many others, and we don't suddenly condemn all heterosexual or cisgender people as a group for those kind of murders. So the fact that this is being extrapolated is just heartbreaking.
Well, of course, everybody's talking about book burning. In fact, when President Biden did his announcement for president again, that he's going to run again, he mentioned that as one of the issues. But the PEN America has issued a report, Banned in the USA, the growing movement to censor books in the schools. No surprise, it's up. If you watch the show, you know how much it's up. It's like an increase of 28% over the first half of 2022. Censors are going after books on violence and abuse, health and well-being, that cover death and grief. Many were removed without being read. But at the top of the list is Gender Queer. This is from the American Library Association by Maya Kobabe. Kobabe, I'm sorry, you told me. Kobabe. Followed by All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson, and The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison.
Yeah, very depressing. And meanwhile, Twitter has removed gender identity and expression from its list of protected terms against hate speech. So now everybody using Twitter is free to use hate speech against trans and non-binary people just right out front.
Well, we just heard about a school in upstate New York, Houghton University, Christian University. They fired 2 staff people, 2 resident directors, because they included their pronouns in their emails. These are cisgender, a man and a woman. They also closed their programs to promote diversity on campus and sustainability.
These were 2 resident directors who had quit. They were leaving the university, but in writing a letter to the administration, they included their pronouns under their names. And the administration got so angry that they said, "We are firing you right now. We are not waiting for you to quit at the end of the term. You are fired, and all your benefits are cut off, all your pay, everything. Get out."
They both have names that could be misinterpreted as male or female, as they said. And they said, we just like to make people comfortable. So, Joshua said, I'm he, him. And the woman said, I'm she, her. And that's all it was. It's very professional these days. They go to conferences. It's just,
Why are people so threatened by this?
The gender divide, and as you well know, it's that, come on, why weren't women allowed to vote until 1920?
Or wear pants.
We could go on and on.
We could, but I'm just saying, when you stop and think about it, the things that these people are scared of and get so angry about and strike back so hard about are just ridiculous.
Well, like the Bud Light controversy over partnering with Dylan Mulvaney, a trans influencer. Apparently sales and the stock took a bit of a short-term hit, but it shows just how much the right has been groomed to hate trans people. The company put 2 of the marketing executives on leave over it.
Yeah. Well, at least Fox got rid of Tucker Carlson, although I don't think that's going to change the editorial policies of Fox. And I'm not so sure he won't land on his feet somewhere and rake in a lot of money like,
Well, we don't hear too much from Bill O'Reilly anymore. Or all those people. All right. More on the anti-abortion judge, Matthew Kacsmaryk. Not only did he illegally fail to report some of his extreme anti-abortion, anti-LGBT writings, as required during his confirmation process, now we learn in undisclosed radio interviews he referred to being gay as a lifestyle and expressed concern that new norms for people who experience same-sex attraction would lead to clashes with religious institutions, calling it a change in sexual norms that began with no-fault divorce and permissive policies on contraception.
Look, they're going after contraception. And there was a back and forth in the United States Senate over some of these issues. A non-binary sailor in the Navy had talked about their life and how proud they were to serve in the Navy because their grandfather had when he was an out gay man, or a gay man, maybe closeted. So let's look at that sailor and then what the Senate did with an admiral questioning him about it.
Hi, my name is Lieutenant Junior Grade Audrey Knudsen, and I am from Aurora, Colorado. I'm stationed here at Legal Assistance at Brilso Midland in Norfolk, Virginia. And I joined the Navy because my grandfather served in the Navy in World War II. He was on board the USS Hornet, and it means a lot for me to be able to join the Navy because he was a gay man in the Navy and he had a really difficult service. So for me to join as non-binary is really powerful to me and something that I'm certainly proud of. And I was able to deploy on the USS Gerald R. Ford last fall, and the coolest thing I did on board was to be able to participate in a LGBTQ spoken word night, and I was able to read a poem that I wrote to the whole ship, and that was probably the culmination of the whole deployment.
Many of us watched the video that has gone viral online of a young Navy Lieutenant JG. I have a lot of problems with this video. This non-binary officer said the highlight of her deployment on the USS Gerald Ford was reading a poem to the entire ship. Admiral Gilday, have you seen this video?
I have.
I hope we train our officers to prioritize their sailors, not themselves. Did it surprise you that a junior officer says the highlight of her deployment, her first, and the ship's first, was about herself and her own achievement?
I'll tell you why I'm particularly proud of this sailor. So her grandfather served during World War II, and he was gay, and he was ostracized in the very institution that she not only joined and is proud to be a part of, but she volunteered to deploy on Ford, and she'll likely deploy again next month when Ford goes back to sea. Sir, we ask people from all over the country, from all walks of life, from all different backgrounds to join us. And then it's the job of a commanding officer to build a cohesive warfighting team that is going to follow the law. And the law requires that we be able to conduct prompt, sustained operations at sea. And so we have to, that level of trust that a commanding officer develops across that unit has to be grounded on dignity and respect. And so if that officer can lawfully join the United States Navy, is willing to serve and willing to take the same oath that you and I took to put their life on the line, then I'm proud to serve aside them.
Thank you, Admiral Gilday.
And thank you, Admiral, for correctly using pronouns to refer to this sailor. Both that senator and the Montana legislature misgendered Representative Zoe Zephyr and this sailor, and they talk about decorum and respect, and yet they will not respect the people they're talking about.
Well, I would like Senator Dianne Feinstein to have some respect for the body that she's in, or that she's not in. She's been out since early February because of illness. And the Democrats are unable to do so many things, mainly confirm judges. And, you know, they took a poll at Equality California. 95% of people said they wanted to step down. I mean, you can't do the job, get out of the way. This is what the Republicans did when they had one of theirs who was going ill. It's about the country. It's not about you.
Thad Cochran, I think that was, from Mississippi, who the Republicans kept it. It's beyond my ability to comprehend why she would stay. I just don't get it. And why?
Well, it's selfishness. I mean, she's not even there to be catered to, or you know, it's just incredible. But you know,
well, she's destroying any respect anyone has for her. So I don't know why she thinks it's a plus to stick around. She'd get a lot more respect if she would step down.
Okay. Now,
maybe Gavin Newsom doesn't want to have to appoint anyone to her seat and show favoritism.
Well,
so,
we could just do an interim. Joe Biden's announcement for re-election, by the way, incorporated a bunch of rainbow images, and Kamala Harris and this second gentleman, Doug Emhoff, marching at a pride parade. Don't expect any rainbows on the DeSantis announcement if it ever comes. It also had a picture of Jim Obergefell, at the Supreme Court and spoke out against banning books.
And not that I think this is hugely impactful, but it's a nice gesture. Biden has put together a presidential advisory commission on advancing educational equity. There's a thought. Excellence and economic opportunity for Black Americans. Right. And one of the chairs is Malcolm Kenyatta from Pennsylvania, out gay legislator who's got a bright future ahead of him and has been doing great things there. And also on that commission, our recent guest, Dr. Marissa Richmond, trans woman from Tennessee. And congratulations to both of them for their appointments to that commission.
And who knows whether this will be impactful, but the U.S. House Republicans passed a bill to bar transgender women and girls from participating in athletic programs designed for women and girls, approved entirely along party lines, 219 to 203. No chance of passing the Democrat-controlled Senate or President Biden signing such a bill. It would require absolutely insane examinations of girls, invasive ones, to verify reproductive anatomy.
They say there's no chance of it passing. I get a little scared that, a defection or two could screw this up. Although I don't think Biden in an election year with how much he needs our community is going to go along with that. But the governor of North Dakota signed a no trans youth care, and it included criminal penalties for doctors who provide such care.
Okay. In Missouri, we told you how the attorney general there unilaterally, ended trans affirming care for everybody practically. And he set up a hotline for reporting on the Transgender Center concerns for those who witnessed troubling practices at clinics providing the care, but it had to take it down because it was flooded with spam. People would post whole scripts of movies on them and things like that.
Couple of good pieces of news. In Minnesota, the legislature passed a law making the state a refuge for people needing trans youth care, and abortion. So Minnesota welcomes people to the state for that. Several states have done this now. And the governor has said that he will sign that bill. And in Kansas, our hero, Governor Laura Kelly, has vetoed 4 more anti-trans bills, but the legislature does have a history of overriding some of those vetoes, so we'll keep an eye on that.
I just don't want to lose one quote from the spam to the Attorney General of Missouri. One of them wrote, "I saw Goody Proctor injecting estrogen with the devil."
Sorry to have made you do that out of context.
Okay.
In North Brookfield, Massachusetts, the selectmen have rescinded a permit for the Pride Parade because they say it's going to include a drag show. It's actually going to be about 3 minutes of something in costume. And in New York, the Reclaim Pride Coalition has announced the 5th annual Queer Liberation March. And the theme this year will be Trans and Queer Forever Here. This is going to be June 25th, the last Sunday of June, as always. Later in the day, people don't like to get up early, so we finally decided to do it later in the day, gathering at Foley Square at 2 p.m. for a rally, and then marching up to Washington Square Park. We hope without the strategic whatever police group that attacks us annually now.
Well, speaking of which, in New York City, the trial of the officers, or the administrative trial of the officers who killed Kowalski Trawick, a developmentally disabled gay man I believe this was in the Bronx.
Yes.
There was a disturbance at his place, and they came in and they tased him and they shot him. He was holding a knife because he was cooking. But it is a long, complicated story. But they didn't use what are the standard procedures for containing an incident like that. After all, they had guns, and they ended up killing him. So the administrative trial is underway. It doesn't sound optimistic given the way the judge is behaving.
Yeah, the judge is being quite sympathetic to the police. Already tried to drop a charge against the police. Not good. In Missouri, to go back there, Malachi Robinson, 25 years old, got 22 years in prison without parole in a federal prison for a hate crime for the attempted murder of a 16-year-old gay young man. Lured him into the woods, shot him 8 times. Just for fun, for entertainment.
Sorry, in Atlanta, Black trans woman Coco Dedal, 35 years old, was found murdered last Tuesday. Coco was the star of the Sundance hit documentary Kokomo City, a film made to show the fun, humanized, natural side of Black trans women. It premiered in January. It won a bunch of awards. One of Coco's songs will be featured in the next season of Lena Waithe's series, The Chi.
And they did an autopsy on the protester Tortuguita, who is part of the group protesting the new Cop City in Atlanta, and found that he had been shot 57 times by the police. 57 times. Peaceful protester.
It's called overkill. So we go into some of the people we've lost, other people we've lost this week.
Yes.
Well, we lost some legendary pioneering LGBTQ playwrights this week, including lesbian feminist Megan Terry, whose Viet Rock in 1966 took on that war and was a rock musical before Hair. She died at the age of 90, survived by her wife, Joanne Schmidman. Yeah. I'm sorry, Schmidman, yes.
Yeah. And also playwright Robert Patrick, at 85, the very famous author of Kennedy's Children. And
I saw it on Broadway.
Yeah.
It's about denizens of a bar 10 years after JFK died, reflecting on their own lives. He also did The Haunted Host back in '64, a gay play that later helped launch the career of a young Harvey Fierstein. He was part of the Cafe Chino and The Village in the early 60s that included Sam Shepard and Patti Smith, Blanford Wilson. He was doing gay stuff before Stonewall. And Samuel French, the publisher, said this was the most produced playwright in New York.
And not gay, but must be mentioned, Harry Belafonte, role model for civil rights activism across the board.
And, you know, you've heard so much about him on the news this week, but they don't talk about how radical he was. He called George W. Bush a terrorist for the Iraq War. He called Colin Powell a house slave for supporting all that. And so he minced no words. He was very close to Dr. King, spoke to him every day. There he is at the March on Washington, funded the movement, just a real hero, 96.
And as Joy Behar related on the View, he was trying to buy an apartment on West End Avenue in New York, and the owner didn't want to sell to him. He even sent white associates to try to fill out the papers to buy the apartment, still got rejected, so he bought the building.
That's what you have to do sometimes.
Evidently.
Veteran gay activist James Creedle of Newark, New Jersey, has died at 78. He was a founder of New York's Men of All Colors Together and the National Association of Black and White Men Together, and a co-founder of Newark Pride Alliance, and a member of the Newark Commission on LGBTQ concerns. He was a very fierce activist. He was a Vietnam vet himself, but he studied it under the GI Bill. He became a very big dean. He became the dean of students at Rutgers Newark. And when he was married in 2013, Cory Booker did the service.
And in Berkeley, California, Lauren Cameron, 63 years old, trans man and photographer of trans men, died of suicide, but was a fundamentally important early photographer of trans men, and really out there and established a whole vision of how people could be seen.
And his photography is archived at Cornell University. He lived as a lesbian for 9 years before accepting himself as trans at the age of 26 and took pictures of his transition.
Yeah.
All right. Well, possums, Barry Humphries has died, the Aussie actor who created Dame Edna Everage, you all know, and took that show around the world. He's died at 89 in Sydney. The Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, hailed him as a great wit, satirist, writer, an absolute one of a kind. Well, could be, you know, obviously a very edgy act. Could be very nasty, I think.
Well, I remember seeing a couple of his Broadway shows, and the first one finding it quite funny, and the second one finding it quite depressing because he was so cruel and what, homophobic, transphobic.
Yes. Let's just say his show would be banned in about 21 states now,
and rejected in the others.
And are we?
Not dead, but out of a job is Don Lemon.
57.
At CNN. He's shocked, he says. Why didn't they tell me personally? Well, welcome to the corporate world. I've seen people come back from lunch and find a note in their typewriter telling them they're fired.
He got in trouble for sexist statements in February. CNN sources said some guests didn't want to appear with him anymore. So that's kind of what led to that.
Yeah, and his co-hosts, two women he didn't get along with. Of course, Whoopi Goldberg says, well, they knew he was a sexist. Why did they put him on a show with women?
By the way, finishing off on Tucker Carlson, a viewer sent us a video that I'll link to in our email. Go to gayusatv.org if you want to get on the list. About Fox's lies about drag shows, including footage of Ronald Reagan hosting one in front of children and the President of the United States. And we will link to that.
They've all done it. But they weren't in drag at the Iowa Faith and Freedom Convention this past weekend. The Republican candidates showed up, and they've learned the script now. All they talked about were fighting trans people and abortion rights.
You're hearing that E. Jean Carroll's civil suit against Trump for raping her and Bergdorf Goodman's got underway in New York. She is represented by out lawyer Robbie Kaplan, who represented Edie Windsor, winning federal same-sex marriage rights.
Yeah, it's always heartwarming to see Robbie, around the edges of and they have really glammed up E. Jean to fight Trump's statement that she wasn't his type. Interesting. All right. International news. President Museveni of Uganda says that he will sign the Kill the Gays bill, but he sent it back to the legislature for improvements. We're all waiting to see what that is, but it has something to do with offering gays the ability to rehabilitate before they're killed.
Our State Department says the bill severely compromises programs to get HIV treatment to millions of people there. And they are talking about cutting off various kinds of aid to Uganda if they go forward with this.
And LGBTQ people in Uganda, first of all, some of them are just fleeing, but others are planning to sue against this bill because the court there did outlaw a previous Kill the Gays bill.
Well, they're fleeing to Kenya, but Kenya is considering similar legislation now, as is Tanzania.
Yeah. And in India, they're working on a same-sex marriage case at the Supreme Court, but the judges got COVID, so that is delayed. But we'll bring you updates.
In Tokyo, their Rainbow Pride event took place for the first time at full capacity in 4 years, with over 200,000 taking part. The theme, Press On Till Japan Changes. Japan is hosting the G7 leaders in May. The only G7 nation without a law ensuring some kind of LGBTQ rights is Japan. So Japanese activists are pressing for progress ahead of the summit, including marriage equality.
In Paris, France, they are changing the Pride Parade there. As the attendance grows, they are banning vehicles supposedly because of climate concerns and trying to reduce the carbon footprint. But any parade that is cutting out floats and trucks is aces with me. And they will have transportation for those with mobility issues. So does the Queer Liberation March. That's the way to go.
And I do want to say to those of you who are canceling your pride marches because of these new laws, make them into demonstrations and march.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is what the Queer Liberation March is. It is a demonstration, not a parade. All right. In AIDS and health news, there was talk about some new approach on HIV and eradicating it. Well, it turns out to be a study of 10 people, 9 men and 1 trans woman. And it's a proof of concept trial where they say some kind of immunology can take people who who are HIV positive but have the virus suppressed, can be treated and then get off their HIV drugs. But this is so preliminary. But people were asking about it.
Entertainment news, still a busy time in the theater. I saw Camelot, and there's good reason that Camelot has really been revived on Broadway, and never successfully since its 1960 premiere, despite its memorable Lerner and Loewe songs. It made a lousy movie in '67 with Vanessa Redgrave replacing Julie Andrews. They brought in Aaron Sorkin to redo the book, making it, less magical. But he made it also kind of anachronistic. So that's out actor Andrew Burnap, playing King Arthur from The Inheritance there, and Philippa Sue as Guinevere, and Jordan Donica was in great voice as Lancelot. But I felt it just didn't take off. It just didn't.
It's not an edgy play, and it's very hard to imagine bringing it up to date.
Right. No, like the songs. Peter Pan Goes Wrong is just silly fun and very well done, mostly slapstick and some topical humor, and an ostensible amateur production of Peter Pan where literally 500 things go wrong. Out actor Neil Patrick Harris joined in the fun as the very arch narrator. And he was very good. And he's going to be in it for a while now. He's extended. Not quite as violent as this company's The Play That Goes Wrong, but still fun.
The Drama Desk Award nominations are coming out this week, and they have joined the parade to non-genderize their awards. They're going to, instead of Best Actor and Best Actress, they're going to have Outstanding Performer, just 1 award, but they are doubling the number of nominees in each category, and they will give 2 awards in each category. They may be same gender, different gender, non-binary, whatever, but and if there's a tie, they will give more than 2 awards. So they're opening it up.
The actor Richard Armitage has come out, a TV and film veteran, the Hannibal TV series, the Hobbit trilogy, and currently starring, and I saw it, the new Netflix series Obsession, as a neurosurgeon who begins a dangerous affair with his son's new girlfriend. Oh, boy. Armitage says he came out to people in his life when he was a teenager, but not publicly until now. And actors worry about coming out because they feel they won't be able to play certain roles and things like that. But he's out now. He says, I love the idea that whatever the gender, sexuality, the fluidity of who you love, how you identify is not fixed.
Well, you'd like to think that with Neil Patrick Harris and others being so successful after they came out, that would provide more inspiration and self-confidence to people, even if they're coming out at 51.
Right.
One correction from last week. I mentioned the Almodovar new short film playing at Cannes. That's the cowboy queer movie. It's not an update of Brokeback Mountain. It's sort of a reply to Brokeback Mountain.
And thanks to our viewer, Andrew, in California, the correct pronunciation of the playwright of Fat Ham is James Imes. Okay? And Alex Newell in Shocked identifies not as trans, but as a gender nonconforming person using she, he, they pronouns.
and was fabulous on Glee.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, the director, Luca Guadagnino, who did Call Me by Your Name without using gay actors, has cast 2 non-gays in his adaptation of William S. Burroughs' novel Queer. Drew Starkey of TV's Outer Banks and the big star Daniel Craig, 007 himself. It's a horror comedy about an American expat, Craig, in Mexico City in the 1950s, obsessed with a much younger discharged American Navy seaman. Craig has taken a bunch of other gay roles from when he played artist Francis Bacon's lover in 1998 in Love is the Devil and as the gay sleuth in Knives Out and Glass Onion. Martha Teichner did a report on this on CBS Sunday Morning and
Never mind.
That's a non sequitur that's at the end of this note.
Okay, never mind. And I'm looking forward to the, I guess, September release of the movie Drive Away Dolls, because it's being made by Ethan Coen of the Coen brothers and his wife and our friend Trisha Cook. They've co-written it. Trisha is a great activist, member of Rise and Resist and Reclaim Pride and a bunch of other stuff. And this has sort of been their dream for a while. They've been working on this for years. It's a lesbian road trip comedy and stars the very popular these days and out Pedro Pascal. I'm right about that, right?
Yep.
And Margaret Qualley and Beatty Feldstein, who is also out, Coleman Domingo, and Matt Damon.
Wow.
That's quite a cast. Drive Away Dolls. So circle September on your calendar for that. And we've raced through this because we knew we had a lot of news with not a lot of time. So let's catch a couple of other things. Lizzo has joined the parade of people supporting LGBTQ people by bringing to her Knoxville, Tennessee show a bunch of drag queens. Some RuPaul performers, some local performers. Madonna has booked extra shows in Tennessee. This is the new thing. Rather than boycott places, you bring the offending group into the heart of the devil to confront the anti-LGBTQ laws or attitudes or violence or whatever else. So that was quite a show that Lizzo put on there in Knoxville.
Yeah. And we have to sift through all this news every week, and it is rather depressing. I mean, I read this week that Terry Schilling, who's the president of the American Principles Project, which pushes a lot of these anti-trans bills, and he said, and this is in the New York Times, I view this whole issue the same as I view lobotomies or eugenics. It's a bad medical fad. It's just so appalling. Of course, they were pushing lobotomies for gay people back in the 50s and 60s and before.
I think they still are.
Well, it's just,
but they totally ignore, it's one thing to have an attitude like that, to say we don't know enough, to say this is my opinion of this. But every major medical organization supports the need for supportive medical care for trans youth, right. Among other things. The gay part of this was solved, 50 years ago. It's such ignorance and such aggressive ignorance that's driving these campaigns. But I'm happy to say also that there is a lot of pushback. We've shown you some demonstrations today. All the legal organizations, the ACLU, Lambda Legal Defense, National Center for Lesbian Rights, and on and on and on, are filing lawsuits against all these laws. So it's not a one-sided fight here.
So, and we would be happy to hear from you about how you're fighting back. We do hear from some of you, and we're happy to convey what you're doing because it gives us hope. And of course, without Tucker Carlson hammering away at this every night, they're not going to be getting the constant feed, because that's where a lot of it was coming from. Fox News, with somebody said, don't even call it a news. Of course, it's not a news organization. It's a propaganda outlet. But they hammer it away. And then people think, oh my God, kids are in danger if I don't do something about this.
And several of our stories today did come from viewers, and we invite you to send us news items from your area. But that's us for this week, and we will see you next week.